Hello and welcome to another video. This is part 3 of our Actix Web series, and in this one we will be dealing with authentication. So we will create two methods, register and login, and we will use JWT for authentication, and we will also be creating middleware to check whether the request is authorized or not. Okay, so we will need few crates. So first one is SHA-256. This is for hashing. Next we have chrono. This is for dealing with time. And finally we have JSON Web Token. So in JSON Web Token, if we scroll down, we can see that Surday is also needed, but we already have that, so I won't add Surday again. I'll just copy the JSON Web Token. We'll also need one more for our middleware, but we'll take a look at that later. We will add all the packages when we need them in our cargo. But for now, let's start by creating new routes file. So let's name this auth routes. We will have to add this in our mod.rs. Let's just copy home routes and paste it in auth routes because most of the code is the same. Only the service change. So we'll remove service, and for path we'll change it from home to auth. Then finally we'll add this to our HTTP server. So for that we'll do .configure, and then we'll give routes, auth routes and config. Next, let's create a handler file for our auth routes. So we'll name this auth handlers. Next, we'll add this to our mod.rs. Now here we'll first create our register method and then login. We'll do post because we'll need some information from the user like email and password. So we'll do post, and then we'll create a async function called register. For return type, we will have responder. Now this function will take two parameters. First one is app state. So we are taking this app state to get the database connection. The type will be web data and then app state. I created this app state in last video where we connected database. So do check that out if you're confused in this. Next parameter will take register JSON. So this will be the JSON data that is coming in the request. So the type will be web JSON and then a register model. So this register model is a structure. We haven't created this. Let's create that. So we'll do struct register model and then all the fields that it will hold. So first one, let's say name. Next we'll have email, and finally we will have a password. So these three fields are the fields which will be coming in our request, post request. Now we'll create a active model for user. So we'll do entity user active model, and then we'll fill in the fields. And this set method is necessary when we are inserting the data in active model. Currently we're getting an error because of the return type. So first let's return something. So we'll use API response and then new. To understand this API response, you need to check out my previous videos. Okay, now we don't have any return type errors, but we do have an error in our active model. Okay, so we haven't given ID, so we'll do default. Next we have Next, we have few errors in our set method. So I think we need to clone this. Finally, let's try to insert this active model into our database. For this, we can do dot insert. Inside insert, we'll pass our database. So this is giving us an error. Let's copy this active model trait that is needed and paste at the top. Now let's await this, and finally we need to unwrap. Now our data is being inserted into the table and we are getting that inserted record in our user model variable. Now we'll return, let's say, ID in our response. So let's do format and then user model.id. Now our basic register method is ready. Next, let's move to login. So same thing, we'll create a post request here and an async method. It will also take two variables, app state, and in this case will be login JSON. Now let's create login structure. So first, let's return something so that it doesn't give us any error. So API response new status code 200, and we'll just pass the empty string. Okay, now the errors are gone. Now we need to actually look for the user based on email and password. So we'll do let user equal to entity user entity, and then find, and then filter. Inside filter, we need to add multiple conditions. So we'll do conditions all, and then we'll add each condition, one for email and one for password. So for email, we'll do entity user column email dot eq. Eq basically means equal to. And currently this is giving error. Again, we need to copy this straight and paste it up. Now we need to pass argument. So we'll do login JSON dot email. Now we need to do the same thing for our password. So we'll just copy this and change the email to password. Now at the end, we'll do dot one. So it will only take one record from the database, and we'll pass our database connection. Next, we'll await this request and we'll unwrap this. So we are getting an option model. We can again unwrap this, but there is possibility that the user is logging in and there is no user. So for that, we'll do if user dot is none. Now there are multiple ways to properly do error handling. We haven't done proper error handling, but this is just one case where I am doing some error handling. So if the user is none, we'll return a response with the 401 and we'll say unauthorized or user not found. And if our user is found, we'll just return, let's say, its name. Now our login and our register is ready. So let's go to our auth routes and add these two routes inside our config method. So we have done this before. It's the same thing. We'll add a service and then give the methods. Now we still have an error. This is basically for serialization and deserialization. So at the top of our structures, we'll give hash drive and then serialize, deserialize. Now let's run this and try out these two endpoints. So first let's register, and here we are getting 2. So I already tested out once, so that's why I'm getting 2. One was for the first time that I sent this request. Next we'll try out login. So here we are also getting our username. So our register and login are working. Now we are logging in, but our password is stored in plain text, which is not good. So let's save it as a hash rather than plain text. So for that, we'll need to add a crate called SHA-52. So I copied it earlier in the beginning of the video. Now I'll just paste it to our cargo.toml. Next thing is to just cover up the password inside a digest method from SHA-52. And we don't need to clone for digest. So let's remove clone, and we'll do the same thing for our login as well. Now we have implemented hashing in our passwords. Next, let's move to our JWT tokens. So in utils, let's create a file called jwt.rs. Next, we'll have to add this in our mod.rs. Now we will be needing 2 more crates, Chrono and JSON Web Token. So we'll add that in our cargo.toml. Finally, let's move back to our JWT file. Here, first thing we'll do is create a structure called claims. So this is the data that will be stored in our JWT. So it will have a few fields, first of which is expiry, which is exp. Next, IAT, this will be the time at which the token was created. Next, we'll add some user information, let's say email and user ID, or just ID. So ID will be i32. Next, we'll have a function for encoding JWTs. We will call it encode JWT. And this will take two parameters, email and the ID. And for return type, it will return a result with string as success, and for error, we'll take a look at that later. Next, let's create a variable now. So this will be used for IAT. After that, we'll create a variable called expire. So this will be duration. So the duration for which the token is valid. Keep in mind the duration and UTC now should be from our chrono. Next, we'll create a claim. For exp, we will need to add current time plus the time for expiry. So it will become now plus expired. And to get it as usize, we'll first convert it to timestamp and then we'll convert it to usize. Now for IAT, we'll do now.timestamp as usize. Email and ID are fine. Next, what we need is a secret to encode the token. So for this, we'll move to our .env file and create a secret. So here I'm just creating a random string, and we'll use this secret string to generate the tokens. Let's add this to our constants. Again, if you haven't watched my previous parts, do check them out because all this code about constants and all is covered in those two parts. Okay, so our secret is ready. We are getting this from our .env. Okay, now we have our secret. With this, we have all the components needed to create a JWT token. Finally, we'll do encode, and the encode will take first header parameters. We don't need any extra headers, so we'll do just header default. For claims, we have our claims variable. We'll pass that. And for key, we'll need an encoding key, and the secret will be passed as a parameter. It takes 3 parameters, but we have given 2. Okay, so I accidentally removed the claims variable. So let me put that back. We have a type mismatch because the error is not of the same type. So we'll just copy the error type and paste it up in our result. Now everything is looking good. We still have an error for serialize. Again, we need to add our serialize and deserialize in our structure. Okay, so our encode method is ready. Now we need to create our decode method. So same thing, public function decode JWT. This will only take one parameter, that is the token. And the return type will be same as last time. And the return type will be token data claims. And for error, it will be most likely same as last time, but we'll see that when we call the decode method. To start off, we first have, okay, so for decoding, we will need our secret. So we have our secret fetched from our constants. Next, we'll do claim data equal to decode. So this decode is the method, and that's all we need. Finally, we'll do claim data equal to decode. So first we'll pass our JWT. Next, we'll pass our decoding string, which will be created using our secret. And finally, we will need to pass our validation. We don't need any extra validation, so we'll just do validation default. Now we need to define proper types for claim data because it's getting unknown right now. So we'll do result token data claims, and for error we have JSON Web Token error. Now we'll just copy this error again and paste in our results error section. And finally, we will return claim data in our decode JWT method. Now our encoding and decoding method are also ready. So let's move to login and actually generate our JWT token if the data provided by the user are correct. Let's store this token into a variable and then send it to the user inside our API response. So to use curly braces, we need to set double curly braces because single curly braces are used for passing data values. And now let's do the final thing, which is creating a middleware for checking if the user is authenticated or not for certain routes. But for that, we'll first create few routes. We'll start off by creating a user routes and user handler file and adding them to their respective mode.rs. For user routes, again, we'll just copy the code from our home routes and we'll just remove the services because most of the code is the same, and we'll replace slash home with slash user. In user handler, we can create any route. It doesn't matter. For simplicity, we'll just create a simple get route. So it will take a parameter for, let's say, database. So we'll have our app state. And it will return a responder type. So for now, let's just return a simple string from this method. We'll do the more complicated stuff later on. We'll add this to our user routes. Now we need to add our middleware. So for that, first we'll create a new folder inside our routes called middleware. Now we'll create a file inside our middlewares called auth middlewares. Now let's add this crate called Actix Web Lab. This will help us to create a really simple middlewares inside a function. Otherwise, it can get really complicated if you're using our regular Actix Web method. So let's go to our auth middleware and create a function which will act as a middleware. So we'll name it check auth middleware. Okay, we have not created mod.rs for this module, so we'll create that and add our auth middleware inside this. Next, let's add this middleware mod.rs inside the mod.rs of our routes. Now let's go back to our auth middleware. So this will take two parameters. First one is request and the other one is next. Request will be of type service request, and for next we'll do message body. Return type will be a result. If success, then service response, otherwise an error. Now in this middleware, the first thing we need to do is get the authorization header. So now we'll have the data of our authorization header inside our auth variable. We'll check whether the authorization header exists or not. If it does not, we'll send 401, that is unauthorized. But if our authorization header does exist, then we need to call the decode JWT method and check whether the token is valid or not. Finally, we'll decode the JWT and store the claims inside a variable. Now here again, I'm using unwrap, which is not good for error handling, but we'll do proper error handling video later on. Okay, so finally we'll do next. So this will basically continue the request to the desired route if there is no error and the user is verified. So we'll do next dot call request await map error, and inside map error we'll pass our API response from error. Now we are getting this error because our API response is not getting converted into proper error response. So for that, we need to go to our API response file and create an implementation for error response. So this implementation will need a function called status code, and we'll just return the response code from self. And we'll also need an error response method. This will return an actual HTTP response. So first we need body. So for body, we'll use again our self body and create a box body. And we'll use this box body and return a error response. So for status code, we can just again use the self.status code. And for body, we'll do set body body. It looks like we need to add another trait for display. So let's do that as well. So in display, we don't need to do much. We'll just write out the error code and let's say whatever there is inside our body. Okay, so it also need debug. So let's do drive debug. Okay, now all our errors are gone, and let's check our middleware, and here also all the errors are gone. Now let's use this middleware to protect our route. So we have to do dot wrap from function, and inside from function we'll pass the middleware function. So for that we'll need to do middleware auth middleware, and finally check auth middleware. Now our user route of this config is protected behind our middleware. Now everything is ready, so let's run this and see if our middleware and hashing is working properly or not. Okay, so if I just send a request without any header, we are getting unauthorized, which is good. Next, we'll set up bearer token and we'll pass a token and see if we are getting an error or not. Okay, so we are getting an error. Base 64. Okay, this is because we are passing the token. This is because the token comes in the form bearer space then actual token. So I think this space is where it's getting the error. So we'll do dot replace after unwrap of token, and we'll replace bearer space with empty string. So this should remove all the extra stuff inside our authorization header, and we should have proper token in our variable. And yes, this worked. We are getting verified user, and with the proper token our route is working. Hope this was helpful. Please give a thumbs up if it was helpful, and do consider subscribing.